In 1948, in a laboratory at Indiana University, a psychologist named B.F. Skinner did something almost cruel in its simplicity. He put hungry pigeons in boxes, one to a box, and he set the food to arrive completely at random, not for pecking a button, not for any action at all. Every 15 seconds, a little food dropped in, no matter what the bird was doing. The pigeon had zero control. And Skinner sat back to watch what a mind does when reward arrives for no reason. What it does is invent a reason. Within a short time, most of the birds had developed a private, elaborate ritual. One pigeon turned counterclockwise circles between feedings, 2, 3 turns, then a pause for the food. Another kept thrusting its head into a corner. Another bobbed and swung its head like a pendulum, over and over. Each bird had, by accident, been doing some particular thing at the moment the food first arrived. And its brain drew the only conclusion a brain can draw. I did that, and food came. So do it again. Do it harder. And the food kept coming, on its own schedule, indifferent, proving the ritual right about a third of the time, which is all it takes. Skinner had a name for it. He called it superstition. A pigeon, spinning in circles in a box, certain it had found the secret that made the world give it what it wanted. So here is the question this episode answers. When something works out, a battle won, a sickness cured, a fortune made, and we look for the person or the ritual responsible, and we find them, and we bow down and copy them and hand them power. How do we know we are not the pigeon? How do we know we are worshiping a cause and not just the thing that happened to be spinning in the box when the food dropped? If you have ever kept doing a thing that worked, a routine, a lucky shirt, a way of holding your day together, long after any evidence it does anything, you have already felt this. You just were not told a pigeon in a box discovered the whole mechanism first, and that it runs every temple, market, and throne room you have ever walked into. In the modern half of this episode, there is a man who is, right now, in the middle of the single greatest winning streak in the history of his profession. 15 years, one after another, of being right when almost everyone else was wrong. The whole world will decide he is a genius, and in about 15 minutes, by the clock of this story, he will make one move, the move his genius demands, and it will destroy him. Start the clock. We are counting down to it. Now. Rome. The year is 249 before the Common Era, in the middle of the first great war with Carthage. The Roman fleet is preparing for battle off the coast of Sicily, and the commander, a consul named Publius Claudius Pulcher, does what every Roman commander did before a fight. He consults the sacred chickens. Yes, chickens. The Roman state kept sacred fowl and read the will of the gods in whether they ate. Before battle, the keeper would scatter grain. If the chickens fell on it hungrily, the omen was good. The gods approved. If they refused to eat, you did not fight. An entire war machine, the most disciplined military on earth, took its cue from the appetite of birds in a cage. And on this morning, the chickens would not eat. The keeper brought the news to Claudius Pulcher. The sacred chickens refuse the grain. Bad omen. Do not fight. And Claudius, impatient, contemptuous, made a joke that outlived his entire career. If they will not eat, he said, then let them drink. And he had the sacred chickens thrown into the sea. Then he attacked. He lost. The Battle of Drepana was one of the worst naval defeats in Roman history. Most of his fleet was destroyed. And here is what Rome concluded, and it is the mechanism in its purest, ancient form. Rome did not decide that reading chicken appetite is a ridiculous way to run a navy. Rome decided the opposite. Claudius Pulcher had defied the omen, and the omen had been right. He was tried, condemned, disgraced. The lesson carved into the Roman mind was not, the birds mean nothing. It was, never ignore the birds again. A fleet of thousands of men sank into the sea, and the conclusion drawn was that the chickens should have been consulted more carefully. And this was not one eccentric general. Rome ran the whole apparatus of state through it. There was a college of augurs, priests whose entire office was to read the will of the gods in the flight of birds, the feeding of the sacred fowl, the pattern of lightning, the entrails of sacrifices. No consul took office, no army marched, no assembly voted without first taking the auspices, without a professional checking whether the signs were favorable. And the record is full of the same shape as Drepana. A few years before, another commander, Gaius Flaminius, is said to have brushed past the omens on his way to meet Hannibal and rode straight into annihilation at Lake Trasimene. Tens of thousands of Romans killed in a single morning by the lake. Again, the lesson taken was not that omens are noise. It was that the gods had warned him, and he had not listened. The system could not lose. A victory proved the auspices worked. A defeat proved they had been ignored. Nothing that ever happened could count as evidence against it. Look at the loop, because it is Skinner's box exactly. The outcome, win or lose, arrives on its own, driven by wind and seamanship and Carthaginian skill. But the mind cannot leave an outcome uncaused. So it reaches back to whatever ritual was nearby, the chickens, the omen, the sacrifice, and ties the result to it. When the ritual and the result happen to line up, the belief is confirmed. When they don't, it was not the ritual that failed, it was the man who broke it. Rome at least suspected the gods were far away and hard to read. 1,500 years later, a different civilization would locate the magic much closer to home, in the hands of one living man, and line up 100,000 sick and desperate people to be touched by him, one at a time. If you have ever watched a crowd decide that one person carries the magic, that being near them, touched by them, blessed by them, is what changes your luck, and felt the pull to get in that line yourself, then the next story is about the thing you were reaching for. Subscribe. Primal Loops finds this loop somewhere new every week. England and France, across the Middle Ages and into the 17th century, there is a disease the age calls the king's evil. Scrofula, a swelling of the lymph nodes of the neck, disfiguring and frightening. And there is a cure everyone knows. The touch of a king. It was believed that the anointed monarch, and only the monarch, carried a divine healing power in his hands, and that a single touch could drive out the king's evil. So they came. For centuries, in their thousands, the sick lined up to be touched. The ceremony was formal, sacred, enormous. The pigeon bobs its head to make the food come. A dying subject knelt to have a hand laid on his neck to make the sickness go. And the cruelest part is that it worked, often enough. Because scrofula, the disease itself, frequently goes into remission on its own. It flares and it fades, with or without a king. So picture the sequence. A person is touched by the monarch. Weeks later, their swelling recedes, as it was going to anyway. And what conclusion does the mind draw? The same one the pigeon drew. The same one Rome drew. The touch worked. The king healed me. The power is real. Every spontaneous remission was counted as a royal miracle. Every death was quietly forgotten, or blamed on the sufferer's lack of faith. King Charles II of England, restored to a throne his father had lost to the executioner, understood exactly what that power was worth. Over his reign, he is recorded to have touched for the king's evil on a scale no monarch had matched. By the accounts, in the range of 90,000 to 100,000 people, laying his hands on the necks of the desperate, year after year. A man whose own claim to rule was shaky, pressing his palms to 100,000 throats, and with every remission that followed, becoming, in the public mind, more truly, more divinely, the king. And the ritual bred more ritual around itself. Each person the king touched was given a small gold coin, hung on a ribbon and pressed into their hand. a touch piece meant to be worn against the skin forever after. Soon the coin itself was believed to carry the power. People who never reached the king would beg to borrow someone else's touch piece to hold the object that had been part of the miracle. A superstition growing a second superstition on its back, each one confirmed by the same indifferent fact underneath, that the disease was going to come and go on its own, regardless of any of it. Look at the mechanism sharpening. In Rome, the magic was in the birds. Here, it has moved into a person, and that is far more dangerous, because now the ritual and the power are the same thing. To doubt the cure is to doubt the king. The superstition is no longer decoration on the throne. It is the throne's foundation. 10 minutes now, by the clock of this story, until the man on the winning streak makes his move. Keep counting. He is about to be crowned the same way Charles was, not with oil, but with a number. Because the modern mind believes it has left all of this behind. No sacred chickens, no healing hands. We have data now. We have track records. We have proof. And that, it turns out, is exactly what makes the modern version of this the hardest one of all to see. 5 minutes. Here is the man. His name is Bill Miller, and the number that made him a god is 15. The United States, the 1990s into the 2000s. Bill Miller runs a mutual fund, the Legg Mason Value Trust, and he does something no one in the history of American mutual funds had ever done. For 15 straight calendar years, from 1991 through 2005, his fund beats the S&P 500, the broad market, every single year. Not most years, every year. 15 in a row. The financial world does what the mind always does. It reaches for a cause, and it finds one. Bill Miller is a genius, a once-in-a-generation stock picker, a man who simply sees value where others can't. Money pours in. His fund swells into the tens of billions. His every word is scripture. His every pick is followed. He is, in the modern temple of the market, touched by the divine. And here's the thing that was knowable at the time, sitting in plain sight. Run the mathematics of pure chance on the whole universe of fund managers, and a streak like his is not a miracle at all. With enough managers flipping enough coins across enough years, someone, somewhere, will get 15 heads in a row. It says nothing about the coin. Even Miller himself, in his honest moments, said the streak was partly an accident of the calendar, that measured on any other 12-month boundary, it would have already broken. The exit was right there. The number is luck. Do not bet your life on the hand that threw it. The math was available. It was published. It was read. And then came 2007 and 2008 and the financial crisis. And Bill Miller, certain by now that he was the genius the streak had proved him to be, made the move his own legend demanded. As the great banks began to shake, he did not step back. He leaned in. He bought the falling financial stocks, the Bear Stearns, the collapsing lenders, the names going to zero, buying more as they dropped. Because a genius who sees value where others panic buys the fear. Legg Mason Value Trust, 2007 to 2008. It was the purest possible expression of the belief that his hand, and not the market's dice, had made those 15 years. And the market, indifferent as Skinner's food chute, gave its answer. In 2008, his fund lost more than half its value. The record was gone. The money fled. The genius, the world abruptly decided, had never been a genius at all. And watch what the temple did next, because this is the part that never changes. The people hurt worst were not the early believers. It was the crowd who poured in near the end, who bought the fund at the top of the legend, drawn by the very track record that was about to break. Their money arrived just in time to catch the fall, And the industry that had crowned Bill Miller did not pause to ask whether the whole idea of the genius streak was an illusion. It simply went looking for the next 15-year record, the next hot hand, the next manager to anoint. Because the machine does not run on any particular profit. It runs on the need for one. We tell ourselves the modern world cured us of superstition, that we replaced omens with evidence. Look at what actually happened, and it inverts. The track record, the 15-year number, the hard data, that was the omen. It was the sacred chicken and the healing hand in a spreadsheet, a run of coincidence the mind refused to read as coincidence, dressed up in exactly the language, proof, performance, track record, that made it impossible to doubt.
The consul who trusted the birds, the crowd that trusted the hand, the market that trusted the streak. 3 temples, 3 rituals, 1 machine. A mind that cannot look at a good outcome and simply say, that was luck, and the person standing next to it did not cause it. Go back to Skinner's pigeons, because he found one more thing, and it is the key to the whole loop. Skinner noticed that the superstition did not appear equally in every box. The birds that developed the strongest, most fanatical rituals, the ones that spun and bobbed most desperately, were not the birds with the most control. They were the birds with the least. The more random the food, the more elaborate the dance. When the reward was steady and predictable, a pigeon stayed calm. It was precisely when the world became unreadable, when nothing the bird did reliably mattered, that the ritual exploded. Because a mind facing pure randomness would rather invent a false cause than sit with no cause at all. That is the loop. And read it in the places humans are most superstitious, and you will see it every time. We do not build our biggest rituals where we are powerful and in control. We build them exactly where we are powerless, over the harvest, the storm, the disease, the battle, the market. The domains ruled most completely by chance. The augur, the healing king, the market genius, are not signs of a species that has found the levers of the world. They are the species doing what the pigeon does in the box, facing an outcome it cannot command and inventing a hand to blame it on. Because a false cause is the one thing more bearable than admitting no one is steering. The pigeon does not spin because it is in control. It spins because it is not, and cannot stand to know it. We do not worship the lucky because we mistake them for the skilled. We worship them because the alternative is admitting that the things we most need to control are the ones ruled entirely by chance. And that is the one truth the mind will spin in circles forever to avoid. This is the loop Primal Loops exists to keep finding. The same frightened reflex behind a Roman altar, a royal hand, a fund manager's streak, certain each time that it has finally found the cause. Next week, we go small and cold-blooded to an animal that decides who is telling the truth. Subscribe so you are in the room when it does. And before you close this, think about the last person you were told to follow because of their record. The founder who always sees it coming. The investor with the streak. The coach, the guru, the account that called the last 3 big moves and so must know the next. Think about your own small rituals too. The ones you perform before the thing you cannot control. The lucky order of a morning. The way you have to do it, or the day goes wrong. Somewhere, right now, the food is dropping on its own schedule, and a very smart animal is turning circles, certain it is the reason. So the only question left is the one you will feel the next time someone's winning streak makes them sound like a prophet. Are you looking at skill, or are you about to kneel down in front of a pigeon that got lucky and hand it the throne? Name the person everyone worshipped for a hot streak, right up until the streak ended and it turned out to be luck the whole time. First one in the comments.
Animal register. EP17 equals rock pigeon. Skinner, 1948. Distinct species. Locked.